Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Outside the Studio. We have a guest, a very special guest here. I've been looking forward to speaking with Jennie Blonde for a very long time now. Jennie has a new book out, The Comfy Cozy Witch, and this is a brand new book for you. When did it get published?
Yeah, this actually is yet to be released. It comes out 1 week from today. I don't know when this episode will air.
It'll be out by the time we air because we are, let's see. Yeah, well, it'll be about 1 week from today. It'll
Okay.
be maybe on your book birthday.
Yeah, oh yeah. September 3rd. So it comes out next Tuesday, September
Okay.
3rd.
Right around then. Oh, I love that cover.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Will you read us the subtitle, Jennie, while you're holding it up so we can all
It's
see it?
A Comfy Cozy Witch's Guide to Making Magic in Your Everyday Life.
Such a good time of year to think about that. I love September for so many reasons. And one of the reasons is because I feel like I want to start to nest more, and I want to bake, and I want to be doing things with my hands, like making things. And I always think of ritual and spell and all of these things that you touch on in your work: acceptance, simplicity, balance, delight, warmth, reflection, intuition. So where do I want to start?
But can I just say that
Yes.
you're so right. September, as we come into the autumn equinox, that's when naturally we want to go inward and we want to embrace these tenets of a comfy, cozy, magical practice. And I love that you said with baking, and because that's, I mean, what I love to do. Yesterday was my son's first day back to school. He's 10 years old, and the one thing he asked for was when he got home, he wanted to have a peach crumble. So yeah, at like 1:45, he gets off the bus at 4. Was it 1? Yeah, 1:45. I started and I peeled and sliced up the peaches and did a little bit of kitchen witchery, kitchen magic, and it just made it feel like fall. It felt so much like fall, even though it was 84 degrees out here in Pennsylvania. But it made me so excited for this time of year, which is a very exciting time for a new book to release, especially one about magic and ritual and spell.
Well, so now I'm feeling really expired. Blah. Now I'm feeling really inspired to go down into the kitchen and bake something. So I want to hear a little bit about that process for you when you're baking and you're infusing magic and ritual into your goodies. What does that look like? How do you do that?
First, in my kitchen, my kitchen is one of my sacred spaces. And so I have a little kitchen altar that's just dedicated to magic making. And it's just a cutting board, like it's a thick piece of wood cutting board. And there's a little candle there, and I have a recipe book next to it, and little crystals, whatever I feel like putting there. And so I always, get in touch with that first and just ask my ancestors, my guides, to help me as I do some baking or some cooking. And I'm a very intuitive baker, which probably isn't the best, because I know you can cook intuitively and throw in what you want, but when it comes to baking, typically you need to be specific with the amount of baking powder you put in and, flour. But honestly, I don't do that a lot. So yesterday, my peach crumble, I just asked, my kitchen deities, my Grammy, who has passed on. I work with her because she was a kitchen witch, even though she didn't call herself that. I believe she made a lot of magic in the kitchen. I asked for some guidance. And then as I'm pulling ingredients to make the food, I think about the correspondences of the ingredients. So, for example, peaches, are going to bring out some natural sweetness, and I ask the peaches to infuse the dish with sweet, and to invite in kindness and sweetness for whoever's eating it. And then when I add the cinnamon, I I almost talk to the cinnamon itself and ask it to provide the warmth and protection that it embodies. And so I'm thinking about that as I'm throwing that into the mix. So, I'm stirring my peaches, putting in, a little bit of sugar, added sweetness. Sometimes I'll do honey, stirring in the cinnamon and the other spices, and just asking that warmth and that sweetness to be part of the dish. So that's kind of my process when I'm cooking or baking intentionally, and I want to infuse a little bit of magic into whatever I'm cooking.
Oh, that sounds delicious and so yeah, so yummy in my tummy. That I'm so nostalgic for that because similarly, when I would come home from school as a kid, my mom this time of year would typically have something like an oatmeal raisin cookie or some kind of oatmeal cookie. And my mom was such a health nut. She never bought anything store bought in terms of like cookies or soda or sugar cereals, but she would make it from scratch. And
Oh,
it was such a sweet thing to come home to. So I love that. And also, it reminds me, have you ever seen that movie, like Water for Chocolate,
oh
or read the
yes.
book?
Yes. Oh my
How,
gosh.
I mean, the intention that we put into our food, that my takeaway from that book and the idea behind it is that our emotions, our intentions are very, very powerful. And
Mhm.
what we're feeling and intending to, whether it's conscious or not, really does go into the things that we make.
It does.
Maybe it's to eat, or it can be other things, I suppose, too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Anything that you create with your hands, that energy that you have goes into it. That's why I try not to do any magic making when I'm not feeling grounded and kind of
Mm.
present, and when my mind is scattered, or I've just been crying over something like I was this morning when my technology wasn't working. Which we had talked about before you hit record, so you understand my frustrations. But,
Uh-huh.
before I do any sort of magical working, I like to make sure that I'm grounded and that I have the best energy going into whatever it is I'm making.
Do you think there's ever a time and place to do the work with your hands when those emotions come up anyways? Maybe you're upset, maybe you're mad, maybe you're ungrounded, but
Yeah,
it's
I
important to do the work anyways.
I think so, and mostly when you're in need of some sort of emotional release, I think that's a good time to do a working specifically to help release and get through those emotions. In fact, this morning I had just shared with some people um, an ocean ritual that when you are upset about something in a high anxiety state, writing down whatever that is on a piece of paper and giving it to the ocean in a ritualistic way. I think in those cases, yeah, absolutely do the magic making, do the workings. Um, but if when my son went back to school, I made him a little protection pouch that I put in his book bag. I make him one every year. And he needs to have that. That's something that he asks for at the beginning of every year. And if I were in an excitable state or highly emotional, that is a working I would not do until I am grounded. Anything that would affect others, if my emotions would affect others, I wouldn't do any type of magical working
Mm.
in that time of turmoil. Did that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's such an important clarification. So thank
Mhm.
you for saying that.
Yeah.
It's a really good example too. I realized that I started to introduce you and I kind of stopped short of saying, well, she has this amazing new book out, but you
Oh.
also have a podcast and everything kind of follows this thread, the comfy, cozy witch.
Mhm.
And I'm curious how you got into this work, what
Mhm.
inspires you to continue to do it. And I'd love to just hear a little bit about your origin story.
Right. So I've loved magic. I've loved witches, witchcraft since I was very small. And I remember being with my best friend Lindsay and doing the Ouija board and making spells out of, dirt and mud. And I remember attempting a spell when I was very young at my grandparents' house. It was just flour and water and a little bit of sugar. I was going to make some bread that would help me become taller. I'm only 4'11". I never got any taller than 4'11". Clearly it didn't work. But I was attempting spell work from a very young age. And that was just from what I've seen in pop culture, in movies and television. And then when I was about 12, 13, I was at Walden Books in the mall. Whenever bookstores were in malls, tiny Walden. And I picked up Silver Raven Wolves to Ride a Silver Broomstick, which was a book about witchcraft. And that's when I first realized, oh my gosh, I could be a real live witch. It's not just something you see in television. There are people out there who are practicing witchcraft. And I read the book and was just so inspired by it. I started just dabbling in some of the things that Silver talked about. And so over the years, my practice kind of waxed and waned. And about, oh gosh, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago is whenever I came back to a magical practice. I think I was at a place in my life where I was seeking more in my spirituality. And so I came back to all the fun, witchiness, and magic. But what I realized is a lot of what I was seeing, what I was reading, what I was interacting with online, didn't follow the type of practice that I wanted. I wanted something a little bit cozier in nature. Not that witchcraft isn't cozy in general, because I think it absolutely can be, but it just seemed a lot of what I was seeing then was rites and initiations, and you have to do things this way and you can't veer from this path. And I wanted something that was a little bit more flexible and something a little more authentic to me. And that's when I kind of started practicing this comfy, cozy style of magic that focused on grounding and nature and the hearth and home and family and bringing magic into the kitchen. And 15 years ago, there weren't really all of these labels that there are now, like green witches, kitchen witch, hearth witch, yada, yada, yada. I kind of was doing all of that in my own eclectic spin. And then about 5 years ago, I decided, okay, I think others would be interested in hearing about my practice. And that's when I started my Comfy Cozy Witch podcast. And now, I mean, almost 3 million downloads later, it is something that resonates with a lot of, I know, thank you. It is something that resonates with a lot of people, because I think so many people are trying to find their place in the magical world and they don't know where to go. And I'm very open and honest about my journey and my path on my podcast and on your when I'm being interviewed. And that resonates with a lot of people, and it continues to resonate. So that's, the Comfy Cozy Witch about 5-6 years ago, that I hate to say brand, but it kind of has become that.
Mm-hmm.
That brand was born. I didn't expect more than 20 people to listen to my podcast, truly. And it kind of organically grew and exploded and, led to a lot of great friendships and led to me opening my apothecary where I sit right now, my Comfy Cozy Apothecary in my hometown. Yeah. So that was not a
Oh,
short, that was a lot.
well, I think it's important to elaborate on origin stories because
Yeah.
there's so many threads in what you just said that I want to pull on. But one of them is this idea that I think we have as a society when we see someone like you, for example, that has a very successful podcast. I mean, 3 million down, that's a huge deal, congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
But I think we as a society, if we're following on Instagram, we see all the successes. And sometimes it can look like, oh, it's this overnight success. Oh, it's effortless. Oh, we didn't, you didn't have to work that hard. It just kind of like fell in your lap. And maybe for some people that's true, but I think there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes of, the questioning of, am I on the right path? Is this, like you said, I expected just 20 people to listen. I wasn't, it sounded like there was you weren't sure about what would happen.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of the success, is just being willing to be open to whatever comes your way, comes your way. That's one thing that I was thinking about. I was also thinking about, it seems like this came to you at a very young age, and you were able to just kind of follow that through your life and almost know what you wanted to do with your life from and I'm making a huge assumption here, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But with that, I think that, there's kind of like societal pressures that can come in and say, oh, witches are wrong, or witches are scary, or whatever it is. It does seem to me like in our current day and age, we're reclaiming the word witch. There's a lot of literature around it. There's a lot of empowerment around it, but I still feel like there's some pockets where it's a little bit like, oh, I'm a witch, but I don't want to say, I don't want to say that. There's still a little bit of hesitancy around it. So that's a lot. Those are big, broad subjects. I wonder if there's any one of those that resonate and that you want to talk about.
Well, when you mentioned, since a young age, this has kind of been part of my path, I did not know that my life would lead to this. And, let spirit, goddess, the universe, whatever you call it, deity, I think has led me to this for a reason. I actually taught high school English for almost 15 years. And as a public school teacher, I could not talk about my spirituality, my spiritual practices. Did I read tarot with some of my students? Absolutely. Now that I'm retired, I can say that. Did I really love teaching Brit Lit and all the witch trials in Europe, and American Lit and the Crucible and Macbeth? And did I talk in depth about Hecate? And oh, absolutely. When I would get in those units, I think a lot of my students knew, like, oh, she's a little bit witchy. But I taught in very small towns, very conservative areas. So I couldn't be really, really out there with my spirituality. And it wasn't until I retired in 2019, right before the pandemic, that I was able to step out of the broom closet, so to speak. And that's when I changed my Instagram from private to public, and got out there. And at that point, I was writing full time, because I do write fiction as well. So I was writing full time, and I was traveling, doing school visits. And I had to decide, do I want to continue teaching, or do I want to pursue this dream of writing full time? And I decided I want to write. So that's when I quit education. It was a really tough decision. Then the pandemic hit, and I wasn't traveling anymore. Schools weren't bringing in anyone. Schools were shut down. And at the same time, my podcast kind of took off. And again, I think this was just spirit, the universe, what have you, pushing me in taking my writing this direction. And like I had said, I thought 20 people would listen to my podcast. Well, when I woke up the next morning and hundreds of people had downloaded it overnight, my first episode where I'm rambling and I'm, like, I'm so nervous. If you go back and listen to that first episode compared to my most recent, you can definitely hear how anxious I was to put my digital grimoire out there. I mean, this is a digital grimoire. That's how I kind of saw my podcast. But I think it was meant to have success for a reason, because it's touched so many people and has helped lead to books. And like I said, The Apothecary. So in a roundabout way, I did always have that spirituality. I had those 14 years of teaching in public education where I was practicing here and there, under the radar. But then my writing and then the podcast brought me back to my magical practice and sharing it with others. I hope that made sense.
Yeah. Well, and I love that it's journeys like this are never really linear, but when you're able to look at them in retrospect, you can see the path
Mm-hmm.
that you're kind of saying you inadvertently were following, but like it seems when you share it with me, it's like, yeah, that makes total sense. I can see each breadcrumb, I can see each stepping stone
Right.
that's leading you to exactly where you should be, which is where you are right now.
And it's funny that, as you're saying this, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, in my new book, and that comes out. Oh my gosh, I
Yes.
love it so much. I've been hugging it ever since I got my author copies, and it feels so silky. But in the book, one of my exercises is what you just had me do, kind of go through my spiritual journey and chart it and path it. And that's in my book. I actually ask the readers whether they're just starting a spiritual journey or they've been practicing for decades to trace it and follow, like you said, those breadcrumbs. And you will see it's never linear. Never.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I love that so much. And I think that, I think what comes up for me sometimes when I think about this is how do we get over the fear of taking that first step? Like, for example, the fear, I so resonate with you leaving your job
Mm.
and kind of, for lack of a better way to say it, putting all your eggs in the basket of, let's say, writing
Mm-hmm.
and not knowing how that's going to turn out. What is it in you that you think allows you to do the scary thing anyways, even if it's like, I don't know, maybe conventional wisdom says that 50% of new business ventures or entrepreneurs fail in what they're
Right.
doing, but you're still willing to take the risk.
I think for me, it's a little bit of hope. You just hope. And I've always been one to envision that next step and visualize and see it coming to fruition. So I didn't just on a whim decide I'm going to quit. There was a plan in place ahead of time because I had been looking to the future. And so, oh gosh, yeah, hope, some planning, and dare I say, manifesting, spell work sprinkled in there, putting those intentions out into the universe that this is what I want. I think a little combination of that. And I have to be practical as well. I I have a partner, a husband who is very supportive and emotionally and also, has a job where I knew it would be okay if I tried this out for a little bit.
Mhm.
So, as much as I think some people like to say, "Oh, setting out these intentions and manifesting," no, when you make these big decisions, you have to think about the reality too.
Mhm.
So, a combination of just hope and support, a lot of support from family and friends that kind of boosted me and looking to that future and planning for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's really important. The practical with the ability to visualize and manifest, or it's almost kind of like a yin and yang, or the two sides of the same coin. Um, but I think there was something on that. Oh, the manifestation and the ability to visualize. I often, I often want to ask,
Mhm.
and I think for me, you know, I resonate with the ability to see things.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't know if everyone does. Like, I've been in several teacher trainings where people are like going through a guided meditation and the teacher's asking you to visualize something and they're like, I can't see that. So talk to me a little bit about visualization.
Okay. I love that you said this because And I was going to bring it up when I said that because my listeners know that I have aphantasia. I can't actually visualize.
Oh.
So when I say visualize, um, I work with claircognizance, like almost a knowing, like I know that this is what my life's going to look like. I know that this is what is going to happen. So I can't actually see it. So I write these things. I'll write the things down. So it's so funny. As soon as you started saying it, I knew you were going to ask about that. And it's called aphantasia. I don't know if you knew there's a name for it. Um,
I feel like I've heard that, but I don't think I connected the dots. So thank you for putting
yeah,
a name to that because I know it
aphan-
happens, right?
yeah. I speak things out loud.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for example, doing a guided meditation, as they are speaking, I will kind of mutter
Mm-hmm.
to myself or say out loud, she's, oh, we're walking down this stone path. I will tell myself, Jennie, you're walking down this stone path. I can't see it in my head, but I know, like, it's just this knowing that that is what I'm doing. I don't see the colors. I don't see the trees. I don't see the stone. I don't know the texture of things. It's just, I know that's what's going on.
Mm.
I, I know it sounds confusing, but it is just a knowing.
Yeah.
Um, and when people have asked me advice, people who have aphantasia have asked advice, I just say, advice, just restate what they're saying. Just repeat what they're saying out loud and hear yourself saying it. You don't need to see it, but hearing that makes it so.
Mm. I love that. Well, reminds me of how my teacher would address that. She would always say, "See it, feel it, or
Mhm.
sense it." So I wonder if it's do you feel if it's a knowing and something that you know in your body, is it a somatic feeling somewhere?
Mhm. Typically, my stomach.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
definitely. Ugh, that's so cool. I love
Yeah.
that so much. Well, so I want to dive in to the book a little bit
Okay.
more. Um, okay, so tell me, and I know this follows the realm of everything you're doing in your life. Maybe this is the culmination of that work. Maybe you wanted to get it on paper, but was there a moment of inspiration where you were like, I have to write this book? How did it come to fruition?
Well, it came because I was getting a lot of emails, messages about people asking my advice because they couldn't find a place in the witchy world. They couldn't find their place in the witchcraft world. And that got me thinking about how much, especially newer practitioners, rely on the words and the work of others, especially in this world of TikTok and social media. A lot of people will just recreate kind of what they're seeing modeled in front of them. Whether the person modeling it knows what they're doing or not, sometimes I hate to say it because I've seen some TikToks that are a little bit questionable, but that's, you know what, to each their own. Um, but a lot of people were asking, like, where do I start? I've listened to your podcast. I take notes. I don't know where to go from here. And that's what made me think, okay, these people are specifically asking me, the quote unquote comfy cozy witch, for guidance. And that's where I came up with, well, here's a guide. Like, here is my guide. Here is what makes a practice comfy and cozy. And here is how you can create a practice of your own that doesn't rely on the work, the words, the spells of others. You can craft it yourself so it is authentic to you and not something you're just borrowing from an influencer.
Mm, I love that.
Yeah. So the book first, the first introduction part goes over some basics of witchcraft, which, whether you have been practicing for a long time, it's a nice refresher, or are brand new, you have just the basics and correspondences and the elements and what they represent and what, different color correspondences and the basics of astrology. And then I go into the 7 tenets that make up a comfy, cozy magical practice: simplicity, delight, intuition, and, all of those 7 that you had listed earlier. and asks the readers to really think about each of those tenets and how they can embrace them in an inner way, so internally, emotionally, and then how they can outwardly do that as well. Um, and then it goes into the second part, which is the making of the magic. And here I kind of guide the reader into creating their own spells and creating their own correspondences rather than rely on Google or social media that says, oh, black always is for protection and purple is for intuition. It allows the reader to come up with their own correspondences for these common things, because black might not mean that to someone else. An obsidian might do something different than protect, you know. So I wanted people to be able to create their own authentic practice. And that's what that second part is. And then throughout the book, there's, I have little prompts and exercises called Level Up for people who have been practicing for a long time or who are maybe coming back to their practice. If they aren't sure where they fit, these Level Up exercises kind of help them discover where they are in their journey right now.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. I can't wait to get my hands on this book.
Me too. It should be there any day.
Any day.
It should be there any day.
Well, as soon as I get it, I will take a picture and let you know. And
Yay!
you mentioned color, and before we hit record, I mentioned my black cat. And I was just thinking about your past as a teacher and being able to teach about, the history. And I think this time of year, I'm always just kind of fascinated about how we came to demonize the black cat as being, because when these two are sisters. So there's two black
Oh.
cats, and most people think they're the same little kitty, but I can tell the differences in them. Either way, they gave us these cats at a discount from the Humane Society because nobody wanted to adopt black cats.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so fascinating to me that through the hundreds of years, we still have this stigma about, I don't know, black cats being evil, black cats being bad luck. What is that? Where does it come from? Do you know?
Well, I think that came from the Elizabethan era, when women, many older single women, I say older, but we need to think in the Elizabethan era. I mean, me being 40 years old, I would be old.
Yeah.
But
Same.
women who were alone, they would have a companion and an animal. Oftentimes it was in the form of a cat or a black cat. And some people would say that the women turn into a cat. It's part of their like witchcraft, part of their magic. And so if you're ever crossing or a black cat crosses your path, it's really a witch in disguise. And so you can't let them cross your path or they're going to put some sort of curse or whatever was told, by men. Of course, it was men who came up with these things because they have to be afraid of strong, independent women, but that's a whole other episode probably. So that superstition came up that if a black cat crosses your path, it's going to bring you bad luck because it was thought to be a witch in disguise. So that's a little bit where the black cat thing originated. And then through oral tradition, being passed down by word of mouth, that has just kind of stuck. And now black cats are still thought to be, but they're the cutest ones. They're so cute.
No, I love my kitties. I'm so glad I adopted them.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so interesting to me how we as a culture will carry things forward like that. How some things stick and how some things kind of just fall away.
Right.
That's an
Oh, yeah.
interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
I also this time of year, I'm just curious, what are some of your favorite rituals as we head into the fall season?
Well, you already know anything in the kitchen, cooking, baking, anything to do with nature and the turning of the wheel and the changing of seasons. There's a beautiful, beautiful megalith park near me called Columcille. And they have it's the Stonehenge of Pennsylvania, and it's only a half an hour from my house. And so I try to go twice a season to meditate there. I bring my cards. There are trails for hiking. They have a labyrinth, um, a meditative labyrinth that you can walk. So in the fall, especially, I have to get there at least twice. It's getting cool out, the leaves are changing, and I just like to spend time thinking about the season ahead and doing a card pull out in nature in the middle of this stone circle for the season ahead. So that's one ritual that I always love to do. And then on the autumn equinox itself, I celebrate that with my family, and I'll make a big meal. I have some sort of crumble. I'll do some sort of savory fall dish. Sometime I do a soup or a stew with a good crusty herby bread. And my family, we talk about what intentions we want to set for this season ahead. So my magic is it's very simple, and it's just finding magic in those little things, having the dinner, being out in nature, connecting to the elements, especially in fall. Oh, my favorite season. I just can't.
Yeah.
Oh, and every morning, the last week and a half, it's been in the 50s here. And it just feels it feels like fall. It's turning. I can smell it. It's in the air.
Oh, I know. I love that feeling. It's hard to describe, but it feels so fresh and crisp and just
Hmm.
whimsical is almost the word I want to use.
Whimsical.
I
Yeah.
also wanted to ask you about tell me about how you pull cards with tarot. Do you use a specific layout? Do you ever just pull one card and just I'd like to hear about the way that you use your tarot cards.
I use my cards intuitively and what I'm feeling in the moment. I do a card a day. I mean, I will pull at least one card a day. It's part of my morning ritual where I have something hot to drink. I sit down at my altar. I light a candle or two. I light incense. I do a little meditation, self Reiki to get myself balanced for the day. I have my little meditation music going on in the background that plays. I don't want to say her name too loud or she'll start talking to us
Yes.
and you'll hear her. Yeah, you rang, Jenny. um, but and then part of that is journaling. Part of my morning ritual is journaling. So I always write down the moon phase, what I'm grateful for, and then I go into my card pull for the day. Actually, I have it all. Wait, I'll show you.
Ooh, yes.
So this is my current magical journal. Look at how cute it is.
Ooh, that's gorgeous.
But yeah,
I
so
love
every
that.
day I do the same ritual. So let's see. I'll do a little bit of journaling. I don't want to show like everything that's written. Oh, you could see a rune written on that one page. But I do my journaling, and then always part of it is a card pull at the end. And so I will get out whatever deck I'm feeling called to in the moment. Again, it's pretty intuitive in nature. I have my same like 4 or 5 go-to decks that I pull from. And then I just journal about the card that I pull. I reflect on it, think about how it's coming through in my current situation, in my life. I'll reflect on the day before. Does this kind of go along with what I went through yesterday, or is this my guidance for the day ahead? When I'm pulling cards, sometimes I'll specifically ask, show me what I need to see for today, or show me who I am today, or show me how I can show up for others today. So I'll give some guidance whenever I pull the card. And then if I'm a little bit confused, I'll pull a complimentary card that goes along with it, kind of a clarifier card.
Mm.
Some mornings I want to do 3 cards. Some mornings I'm called to do 5. I always do at least one to guide me. And then when I'm going through something, oh,
Yeah, I know the feeling.
so some days I'm called to do 7 cards. So I always do at least one. And then when I'm going through something in my life and I need even more clarity, I'll do longer spreads, or that's when I'll bring in somebody else to do a reading for me. Because sometimes it's nice to have someone who doesn't know anything about you, what you're going through, to give a more objective reading. Because I think sometimes we have a tendency, especially in moments where there's conflict, or we know we want this resolution, we have a tendency to see the cards the way we want them going. So it's always nice to bring in an outside perspective.
That's a really good point. And I guess my follow-up question to that is I often, you're kind of saying, instead of just for those of us that, just are used to Googling or going on the TikToks and kind of believing everything we see on the socials, I guess I have the same kind of question about how would you go about finding a reader that you feel like is legitimate and can trust?
Oh, I would say go, if you have a local metaphysical shop, talk to the owners. Because I like to think most places vet
Mm,
who they bring in. I think it's difficult when you're shopping online for a reader to kind of suss them out
mhm,
intuitively. Like, you're going to feel when you hear them talk, like, ooh, this person could be good, or ooh, they're the way they talk or their messages don't resonate with me. But
mhm,
I think in person is the best way to go. So if there is a local new age metaphysical spiritual shop, talk to the owners. Oftentimes they'll bring in readers that they themselves have vetted. um, and also just word of mouth, ask around in the community, go on Instagram, go on and message some of your favorite creators. I've had people message me for advice on where to go to find readers. So reach out, there's no harm in doing that. And what's the worst somebody can say is, no, I don't have anybody for you, you know?
yeah,
So
yeah.
reach out to those who you trust.
Yeah. Oh, that's good advice. And I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and we have this amazing metaphysical bookstore in Vancouver, Washington. It's called Love Potion Number 9, which I just love because I don't
Writing
know
it
if you ever
down.
saw that movie
Oh,
in
yeah.
was it the 80s or 90s?
80s.
It was with Sandra Bullock, and I can't remember the guy's name.
Maybe it was the 90s.
Yeah, it must have been late 80s or maybe very, very early
Early,
90s, but
yeah.
it's such a okay. I'm inspired to go downtown today.
Go to
Uh,
yeah.
yeah,
Go to Love Potion number 9.
right?
Well, and
Oh,
some places will do, like, tarot open houses where they bring
mhm,
in multiple readers, and then you can sit down with them. And when I was looking for readers for my shop, because that's something a lot of people want, I went to a spiritual expo in, oh my gosh, in Allentown, because I'm, of course, in Pennsylvania, and they had a holistic fair, holistic expo. And I set the intention, this was in June, May or June, of going to find a reader that I connected with. And wouldn't you know, I left with one who was just wonderful. And she read at my 1 year anniversary party, and she's going to be coming in and doing pop up events here in the shop. So putting yourself out there and putting the intention out there. Okay, I'm going to this place. There will be a crowd, but I want to come out knowing that I found a quality reader that resonates with me. So putting that out there and getting yourself out there and meeting people in the spiritual community, and you might find a good reader that way.
mm.
Mhm.
Oh, I love this. I have one final question on this
Okay.
subject, and then we'll close our conversation. Although I could talk to you all day,
Oh, me too. This is fun.
I think my final question on this subject though is I've heard a lot of different ways to approach using something like a reading through tarot, or maybe it's a psychic reading, but I guess I always feel like a little bit of, well, do I divulge information? Do I ask for something specific? Do I just sit there and let this person, start talking to me and telling me what? And I'm sure there's many different ways to approach it and many different, use cases, but I'm curious what you have to say about how to, maybe if for somebody who's hasn't done it before and wants to
Right.
dive in.
Well, I personally, it depends on the reader and the energy exchange and the energy that they have and you have, and how those energies work together. Um, Heather, my one reader, she doesn't want to know anything about any situation, and that's her preference, and I'm okay with that. And I get great readings from her. Allie, another reader that I love working with, she doesn't want specifics, but she just wants a topic. You know, if I'm looking at friendship, relationship, or work, whatever, because she uses that when she puts that intention out there when she's talking to her guides, who then talk, to my guides. So I think it all depends on the reader, and really it comes down to that gut feeling. If you have a reader who is asking you specific information, because there have been readers who want your birth date and want this, they want to know the name of the person that you want a reading about, or when it gets too specific, to me, that's a turnoff, and I would tell people maybe find a different reader. So, oh gosh, I don't know if I'm answering this correctly.
You are.
Again,
Yeah.
it's the feeling that you get working with the reader, making sure they're not asking too many questions. And then the biggest red flag is if they tell you, oh, you need to come back for another session so we can address this issue. That is any reader that says you need to come back, or, ooh, it looks like there's some sort of curse, or somebody has something out against you. You need to come back so we can work on that next week and we'll do another reading. Then that is not legit. You don't want that. Oh, and anybody who reaches out to you over social media and uses terms of endearment like, hi, love. Hi, sweetie. I'm drawn to read for you. Would you like a reading about love or this? There are so many scammers out there doing that. There are copycats pretending to be me who do that, and I don't even read for others, and they're out there. So look for some of those like keyword, I'm called to read for you. They should never reach out to you. You always should be reaching out to a tarot reader.
That's so helpful. Thank you. Those are really very clear signs, easy to spot. And yeah, just when you're saying it, it's like, oh, I can feel that in my stomach. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
Pay attention. Warning bells. Okay, Jennie. Yes, this has been such a pleasure. For those listening who aren't familiar with Jennie's work yet, please support her amazing book, The Comfy Cozy Witch, out September 3rd. I imagine you can get it wherever books are sold, right,
Yep.
Jennie?
Yep.
And because she's made it so easy and streamlined for us, we can follow her on Instagram, Comfy Cozy Witch, Threads, Comfy Cozy Witch, and website is Comfy Cozy Witch too, right?
Yeah.
Is there any last thing you want to say about, I mean, I guess just anything, like anything you wish I would have asked you, anything you hope people take away from this conversation, or a hope you have for putting your book out in the world? I mean, you could answer all three of those questions if you want to.
Well, first, I loved our conversation. Your questions are wonderful. It's so easy to talk to you. This is so fun. And I'm just so grateful that you had me on your podcast. It's amazing.
Likewise. I'm grateful I got to talk to you.
Yay! And I guess I would say I would leave your listeners with this tidbit. Magic and witchcraft is not this complicated, out of reach thing. And that it's very accessible, especially if you're able to find a way to make your craft and your practice and your magic your own. So I guess that's what I would say. We all are magic. Like, we all have magic within us, and just finding it in the little things is so important.
Yes. Oh, that's so good, Jennie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening today. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review on your platform of choice. And if you were listening to this episode and you're thinking of a dear friend or loved one who you know it would resonate with, please share it out. All right, Jennie, thank you. Congrats on your book, baby, being birthed out into the world.
Thank you.
Everyone, that concludes another amazing episode of Outside the Studio. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you learned something new, maybe remembered something old, maybe felt inspired to apply something to your life. You can hear my dog in the background. She's doing a little happy dance. So Daisy enjoyed it. anyhow, I wanted to just pop in here to wrap us up to say a couple of things. Number one, I have such an amazing team that helps me put these podcasts together. Without them, I wouldn't, be able to bring these amazing conversations to you. So thank you to my producer, my director of creative services, my sound editor, my engineer, Consistency Media. Don't know what I would do without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the amazing creation and artistic musical genius, Drew Lovern. Thank you so much for putting together this music specifically for outside the studio. So unique to the show, only place you're ever going to hear it is right here. Thanks, you guys. You make my world go round. Stay well, everyone. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review, share on the socials, especially if it's a show that you think, hey, this could help somebody else. That's what this is all about, right? We're sharing information so that we're better, so that we're inspired, so that we're lifting each other up, and we're learning how to be in this world, living on this planet to the best of our ability, sharing information and inspiring one another. And that's my hope. That's my hope for the show. Take care.